Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Mile High Sports Symposium. I am JT Matthews at JT Matthews on Twitter, and I'm here with the doctor, Nicholas Manning, Dr. Manning on Twitter. Doc, happy Wednesday. How you doing? We got a lot to talk about, but how are you first and foremost?
Well, since just me and you here, I'm tired.
Yeah.
It's Wednesday.
It tends to happen midweek with a bunch of kids.
Yeah, just is. No, everything's good, man. Excited that the weather's perked back up.
Yeah.
I'm going to go see our cousin, John, this weekend.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm going to go help him out. He's battling the C word. Going down there for some trial stuff, but we're also going to see some of my family that I haven't seen in a long time. I forgot. I'm going to go see my cousin Paul. Hi, Paul. Works for NASA. Yeah, that's right. Smart family. But it'll be cool. He's going to take us through NASA, guided tour, all of the stuff.
That's awesome.
I know. As luck would have it. So super excited about that. And then, the sports stuff, which I know we're going to get into. That stuff was exciting. It's exciting to wake up to news, and then more news, and then more news. So yeah, I'm pumped. How are you, man?
Yeah, I'm good. Keep the news rolling in. It's off season time, so this is all the exciting stuff we get until seasons actually start. Well, training camp will be exciting in its own way, but
right.
When you're constructing rosters and people are moving and shaking, it's pretty exciting. I'm good. I'm just work's been a lot lately, so just trying to enjoy my day off today, and then I'll get to work from home tomorrow, which is nice. I don't get to do that too often, but I'm on call, so it's one of the perks of being on call. To work from home, and so that'll be nice. I don't have to wake up. I can sleep in an extra 30 to 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And just go straight downstairs and get on the computer and start my day. So,
yeah,
little wins.
Hey, it's little stuff, man. At 45 minutes extra sleep every once in a while, your body will thank you for it. We are at the age where it's grateful when you stop using it for a little bit of time.
For sure, and I'm gonna play basketball tonight. I don't know about you.
Yeah, boy.
I hope you are, but if not, we'll see.
Yep. No, I can't leave you guys unworked for 2 weeks.
Unsupervised. My body will need the extra 45 minutes after basketball tomorrow.
That's right, true.
I will.
Right, true. Yeah.
It took me 4 days to recover from last one, so it is what it is. This is just
it is what it is. But if a couple more things went my way in high school and college, I could have been in the pros, bro.
That's right. Me too. Any sort of motivation or hard work that would have helped, probably.
That also would have been great. Yeah.
You could be. Yeah, it's true.
And then I will suck it up.
All right.
Whoa.
What
do we?
Does basketball do that for you?
It is hump day.
Factual. Well, before we get too derailed, let's jump into some.
Yeah, let's get it.
We're gonna probably talk mostly about the Denver Nuggets. They have made a number of moves, and I think there's just a lot to talk about there. Not just the roster construction, but this new front office. And
I do, Chris. Though I do.
Yeah, that's kind of true. New front office. New players, how we feel like they fit around Jokic. We lost a few guys, not necessarily big names, but maybe some that people have feelings about. So let's just start I want to start with the front office a little bit. Okay. So when we kind of go back to the press conference, when they first announced our two GMs, the idea.
No, neither of them are the GM.
right.
The vice presidents of something.
The two vice presidents of whatever they are as GMs.
Yep.
The feeling and the takeaway, and I watched the press conference. I didn't get to watch that day, a little bit afterwards, but the basically feeling was we're not going to probably do much in the trade market. We're going to primarily focus on free agency, and I think everyone's takeaway from that is like, oh, we're going to run it back.
Yeah.
So I'm a little surprised by the trade they did end up making, which we'll get to shortly here. I just want your takeaway. Are you surprised that the Nuggets have been as aggressive as they have in the offseason thus far? Or do you think that that was an intentional kind of, lulling fans into low expectations so that they can work behind the scenes? What do you think the thinking was with kind of that initial, just that initial message to the fan base?
Yeah, we talked about it last week when they decided on this structure, and my view was this either is going to go really well or it's going to be terrible. I don't think there's any way that this model could have been in the middle.
Right.
And the one thing that you're leveraging by splitting them up in two different roles is one guy has tremendous relationships. The other guy understands the contractual challenges and what order or domino do they need to occur in for this team to be able to make moves, right? So they're a hair or 2 or 10, I'm not sure, under the second apron, which essentially is like a hard cap as I learned more about it. You can do stuff in-house, but you can't bring anyone in.
Yeah.
So it made a little bit more sense about why they're pussyfooting around the make-believe cap that the NBA's had for forever. That made a little bit more sense. And so watching that in action, I think that initial press conference, I think, was to dull expectations, right? I think the worst thing that would have happened is for them to oversell and underdeliver, right? Like, yeah, we feel good about our ability to go out and improve this roster from top to bottom. Because if I look at it, if any of these deals that we're going to go over here in a minute, if any of them were just the only one, I would have liked the offseason.
Yeah.
Based on what was I expecting? What did we think that they needed? Let alone there being 4 moves. Wow. And at least the early return, the action that has taken place so far, to me leads this was the plan. So when Josh Kroenke is talking to guys, this is how it kind of works. Let me break down a little bit. So when you are going for a job or maybe these conversations are happening before the job's even open.
Right.
So I bet Josh had an idea that both candidates or both, newly minted front office staff, there's a conceptual, like, what do you think the roster needs? And what would your plan be?
Right.
How could you get it there? So conversations throughout obviously are, I know Jordi Fernandez, and he is in, he's in Brooklyn, and he really likes MPJ. We scouted him together. Like, I think there's a move that can be made there, right? Those conversations are real and happening. Josh Kroenke isn't like, all right, you guys, we haven't really talked about what you're going to do, what your plan is, what I already stamp and approve. Just come in and we'll start from ground one, right? Like, if they were starting, because you can see how fast and furious, R.I.P. Paul Walker, the front office has been so far. Like, those moves had to happen in sequence for them to be able to do them, right? So Michael Porter Jr. had to go first for them to have the cap space to then bring in, Bruce Brown, to bring in Tim Hardaway Jr. to make the trade, sending Saric out for Jonas. Is it Jonas? Giannis?
Jonas.
Yeah, it's Jonas, right?
Yeah.
Jonas. And because without that being able to have the financial flexibility, you couldn't have made those. So the MPJ move was already in the work, and who knows how long it had been in the work.
All right.
It could have been during the playoffs. It could have been, end of last season. Like, hey, if I get this job, I'm calling you,
Yeah.
So if that's the case, then I'm even more ecstatic about it, because that means that relationships were leveraged to make moves. You and I talked about it last time, right? Where it's like, hey, do me a solid on this move. If I can take a bad contract from you later, I will, right? The Jokic championship building, is real strong right now. Right? They're fortifying it with Bruce Brown and with Bob. It's going to wither away at some point because time, all the good things. And this version of the Nuggets team will disintegrate. They will have to reboot at some point.
Right.
Rarely do you get, you get Kyrie and then you get LeBron back. And then you get right where it's just, you kind of remain good and don't take a dip when your superstar goes. I don't think there's any way that this team, regardless of who the number 2 scorer is or number 2 on the team, can weather Nikola Jokic leaving. Like, just dude's out of this world.
No.
So then, hey, you know what? We'll be crappy then. We'll probably gut some salary. If you got a move to be made when your guys are getting into the position that we are, we'll take a contract or 2 or something like that. And so I'm super excited about it. And I know we'll talk individual moves, but it's also great because this front office has been action. They're not talking much. I don't think that I've heard them on a mic. I've seen them tweeting. They're making calls, and Shams is letting us know every 2 days, like, boom, here's a nugget. Boom, here's a nugget. Boom, here's a nugget. And so I'm excited about it. And just the energy, like I said, this last week, I think we've all wore it a little bit. But, man, like, good positive Nuggets news, like, it's been a bit. And especially when we all were under the perception that we're just going to try this one more time, guys.
Right.
And so the fact that we're not, and I think they were quality moves. They weren't just move for moves' sake. And so with that, I'm pumped. What was your, even maybe just what was your initial take when the MPJ news got to you?
I was a little bit surprised, not because I didn't think it was something that could occur, but mostly that, I kind of took the press conference at face value, which I probably shouldn't have done. It did sound like they were maybe going to let's try running it back. We took the champs to game 7 in the second round of the playoffs. If we were healthier, maybe, we add 1 or 2 depth pieces and we try again. Or you move some ancillary pieces, some young guys to try and get some veterans. And maybe that's enough to kind of fill in the gaps, right? And so if someone goes down midseason, they have time to recover, et cetera. Give some guys some extra rest during the regular season. But all in all, we maybe just be rolling with the same group because we're a little bit financially at a disadvantage, right? So when the news hit, I was pleasantly surprised, and not that I hated MPJ, anything like that, but of the core 4 guys outside of Christian Brown, he was the one to me that was the most expendable, just due to his the contract that he was signed to, and the level of productivity you get from it at a given time. His productivity is not consistent, as good as he is as a shooter, and it's something that the Nuggets need. It was just something that you couldn't rely on all the time, and that made it a difficult contract to stomach a little bit. And so to me, it made the most sense to move him. It was just a matter of finding someone who would play ball and understood that there is inconsistency there, but there's also some upside for someone who wants to try and develop him into something besides a role player. I don't think that he was going to have that opportunity with Denver, and I can imagine that he probably sacrificed a lot coming in as a, top tier prospect, even given his injury history. Before he was injured, people were talking about him as like the next KD. And so someone who has that hype kind of coming into the league, even like I said, given the injury history, they have to sacrifice to play alongside Jokic. They just do. Jokic is the number 1, and then everyone else kind of falls in line how they do. And they needed him to be a role player. They didn't need him to be a star. Now he'll have that opportunity in Brooklyn. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens. I wish the best for Michael Porter Jr. I don't have anything against him as a Nugget. He's been obviously a big piece of that championship team, had some good series. But ultimately, I was excited about the news. I think Cam Johnson is a more fluid athlete. I think the thing you worry about with Cam Johnson is just his ability to stay healthy throughout a season, which is kind of funny given everyone's injury concerns with
Perception of,
MPJ.
with MPJ, and he's been the
the
healthiest.
He's kind of been one of the
for
men over the last 2 years, at least. So, I think that Cam Johnson is maybe a slightly worse shooter, but, slightly is still pretty darn good. I think he shot 39% from three. A very efficient scorer, which, you put an efficient scorer next to Jokic, that's just going to it will probably compound and end up doing good things for your team. He's got a little more ability to create off the dribble, not a lot, but a little bit, and I'd say he's probably a better defender generally. I think you give up a little bit of size and rebounding, but you get a little bit of on-ball pressure that MPJ just wasn't able to do. You get a guy who can navigate screens a little bit better. Someone who can just kind of keep up athletically a little bit more than MPJ could. And again, a lot of that is just due to injury history and probably the way that he's learned how to play. So I think ultimately, the Nuggets won that trade, in my opinion. I think you clear up that cap space to be able to go and get you depth players, and they did that. We'll talk about those as well, but I just think Cam Johnson's a nice addition to this team, and an IQ guy. He is on the I don't know what it's called now, but JJ Redick's old podcast. He's on there talking ball a lot of times, and he is a bright mind. He knows where to be. He understands his role. I think he's a pretty heady player when it comes to navigating the floor and knowing where to be, and that's invaluable when you have a teammate like Jokic. So, what's your feel on that trade specifically?
That's good. Let's see. I do think I think that I don't know if I'd say that the Nuggets. I'm not sure if they won or lost in terms of I agree with you in terms of the player.
Right.
I like Cam Johnson, at least statistically. Cam Johnson, is a tick below a lot of the things that MPJ brought. MPJ is a better scorer.
Yeah.
Rebounds at a higher rate. He has more length. That said, I think you're getting the same player at the appropriate cost.
Right.
And so I think this move, you don't lose anything and you gain, I think it's like $17 million of flexibility to be able to offer a mid-level, et cetera. And so that to me alone is like, oh, wow. It's, you bought a new lawnmower and you go home, you really like the lawnmower. Tomorrow you found out, or it's the next day, now you found out that if you waited a day, you would have got the same lawnmower.
Yeah.
For 75% of the cost. Like, oh, okay. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. And so I think his ability to work off of the ball and make himself a secondary or tertiary offensive option while staying engaged, I think that will be better. He doesn't have the lapses. I don't think he's going to be a guy that's going to be a threat to drop 40.
Sure.
But his floor is, I think, significantly higher. I don't think you'll see the variance.
Right.
I think he has a much better, I don't know if basketball IQ, but I think a sense of urgency when he plays.
Sure.
Which MPJ didn't. So, I wouldn't say that MPJ didn't have a good basketball IQ. I think he understood basketball just fine, probably at that level. I think he had it. His ability or inability to react quickly, get physical when you need to. It did get better. So, I'm not going to crap on MPJ. I think that he was trending in a good direction.
Sure.
But, in his benefit too, like now you can go be the dude, man.
Mm-hmm.
Go throw up 25 shots a game. That's what they want you to do, and hopefully for him, he elevates himself to the player that he could have been, the physical gifts that he has, all that stuff. But I think for the right now, was that also worth a 2032 for his first round pick? Yeah, for sure. Those things are, random tickets in the wind. You can get, first round picks for vet min guys if you start tanking, you can flip Bruce Brown for the pick swap or something. Those things I'm not very worried about. I just think Cam is a better fit with his off-ball creation, and then his spot-up game. I think he's a stronger spot-up shooter.
Yeah.
Than Mike is. And I heard some weird stat on just how good he was in uncontested three-pointers. I think you and I talked about this just watching the playoffs. It's like, how many times can you miss when you have a clean NBA look?
Yeah.
Everyone gets contested. We'll talk about making contested shots. That's what separates good players from great players. Sometimes at his expectation, the Nuggets just needed good. We need you to show up and give us 14, and don't get lost on defense.
For sure.
And he couldn't do those things. One of those things wasn't going to happen. And so I really like it. I like Cam Johnson. I think he's going to be a good fit. Everything that I've heard locker room wise, he's a good, intelligent, competitive guy. I think he's going to fit well with the room. And so I think they all liked Mike too.
Yeah.
But
sure.
I bet Murray gets it was him or me. Right. And I think in that locker room, if they lost someone to gain someone like Cam Johnson, I think that they probably were okay. It's MPJ. And I don't think for any personal reasons, but I think that they're aware, you play, you know who's the weak link when you're late on defensive rotation time and time again. And the fact that the word was, there's no way we can move that contract. That's who's going to take it. That's what who's going to want it.
Right.
Not only did someone want him, they gave us a good player for it. And, and helped us out so that we could add. So let's maybe kick that one to the next domino. So right after that gets announced that Brucey.
Yep.
Bruce Brown, fan favorite, coming back to the Denver Nuggets. I think it's on a vet min.
Yeah, it is a vet min.
Maybe let's take them in chronological order because I think it's really cool. For sure. By MPJ being able to be moved, the team opened up either kind of a big mid-level exception up to 17 or 18 million, or multiple up to 8 million.
Right.
Depending on, and they have one more NBA spot open, which is pretty cool. And so they get Bruce Brown to come back. Now, mind you, Bruce Brown peaked his season with the Nuggets. So that by far was his best season as a pro. I think even since then, right? I don't think he's necessarily progressed.
Right.
In terms of his points per game. So last year averaged 8.3 points a game, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, 42% from the field, but not too bad shooting threes. My love for Bruce, I think, one is how much he's loved in the locker room.
Yeah.
Right? It came to Nuggets games this last season,
Yeah, when he was at Toronto.
Yep. Wearing his cowboy hat, Cowboy Brucey. And so and if he's able to provide the Nuggets again with what they lost. So when he was here, 11.5 points a game, 48% from the field, 35 from three. And then, a versatile active defender. Yeah. I mean, sign me up for that. Even now, if it's this rendition of him is more like a 9-point a game player, similar rebounds, similar assists, as long as his 3-point shooting, which has dipped the last couple of years, if it can get back to the 35 to 40% range, he gives you kind of everything that Russ gave you without the mental lapses.
Right.
And if that's the case, he's not going to triple double you, but he's going to be steady, play with some tenacity. He's going to rebound from that guard position.
Yeah.
He's a versatile defender. Everyone knows him and likes him. That's a relationship that was super positive. And he wants to be here. It's not all right, I'll go there. He wanted to come home.
Sure.
And so for that, I'm super excited and impressed about how this worked out. what's your take on Bruce? You know, he's 28 now.
Yep.
It's not necessarily the player from before, but definitely someone that would have been great to have on the bench last year.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, for me, it's just as much a vibes signing as it is anything else. You know, obviously, I think you can get something out of Bruce Brown. We saw in their championship run, he was integral to that. He was a huge factor. You know, he was always bringing energy. A guy who was always seemed to be in the right spot, hit clutch shots when they needed him to. You know, rebounded well, like you said, from the guard position, which is something that we'll need now that MPJ is out. And I think it's just someone that you can mix into that second unit that you have confidence is going to be where they're supposed to be and get people where they're supposed to be as well. Yeah. You know, I think that he does have some leadership qualities. I don't know that he is an out and out leader, but he's outspoken. Like you said, he's well respected. I think guys enjoy playing with him. Jokic being one of those guys. And I think that there's just an inherent trust there between him and the guys that he's played with previously. And I think that that'll go a long way. You know, I think you'll find that he is, I don't know if he'll end up being your sixth man per se, but I think that he's got as good a chance as anyone to just be impactful, game to game. As long as he's healthy. He had some issues with health as well. You know, the last 2 years bounced around quite a bit, but I think that he's found a home here in Denver for, I don't know if that means he'll be here long-term or if he'll play with Jokic a year and take the Jokic bump and get paid again and maybe end up somewhere else. But, you know, the fact that he's coming back to his old stomping grounds, I think is a good indicator that he believes in what the Nuggets are still doing. He believes in that core group and he wants to be a part of it. And I think that that's exciting. And I think fans should be excited about it.
Yeah. I mean, maybe he goes and get the Jokic bump, but you know, the Nuggets are going to have to figure out their bench next year and whether or not you're able to extend Braun and Watson, which again, these moves help free up some financial flexibility for you to make those moves. And so yeah, I really love what Bruce can bring. Who knows how that will slot, but the fact that you can say now, because if it were last year, he's the sixth man off the bench. Right. Maybe seven if you have him and Russ, I guess.
Right.
But he's by far the best option that you got now with some of the additions. It's really kind of maybe matchup dependent. You know, what do you need? Who's in foul trouble versus just, we're going to go in kind of the static order. So with that, the Nuggets move a second abysmal contract, being able to trade Darius Saric to the Kings, Sacramento Kings, for Jonas Valanciunas. Valanciunas, 6'11" center from, let me make sure I get Lithuania.
Okay, I couldn't remember. So
he has a 7'6" wingspan. 7'6" wingspan.
Insane.
And so a guy that has averaged, let's see, over the past, we'll just go 3 years, about 21 minutes a game. And with that, he's almost a double-double guy. Yeah. And so last year aside, I think he only played 32 games, but 49 the year before with the Wizards, 20 minutes a game, 11.5 points per game, 8.2 rebounds a game. So you're telling me the year before, 23 minutes, 12 points a game, and 8 rebounds. Year before that, 25 minutes a game, 14 points, 10 rebounds. So if he's on the floor for 22 minutes a night, he's most likely going to get you a double-double.
Yeah.
Which, you know, if he can play a little bit with Jokic, I think that you'll be able to maximize those numbers. You can't, you got to play in lieu of Jokic. I think you'll see that dip. But it's very clear about what you can expect from him. So you can expect a guy that's going to be able to hold it down from the free throw in. Is going to get you rebounds. Last couple of seasons, he struggled with the three, but back in 21 and 22, he was 36% from three, 35% in 22-23. And so the last couple of seasons dipped around 30%, 26 last year. but if you played for the Wizards, I don't really fault you with anything.
Right.
And so hopefully he can be a guy that gets closer back up to his kind of 35% career average, which, for the Nuggets, who were by far the least greedy team to shoot from three, it allows him and Jokic to play together on the floor if he's able to hit a spot up three. So what's your take on the Nuggets finally having a backup center?
Yeah,
like a legitimate one.
It's I was listening, or I read something. I was listening to something. They said this is the best backup center they've had since JaMychal Green, and I was like, was JaMychal Green a center? Like, I think he was supposed to be a power forward. I think he did play like small ball center minutes. But geez, like if that's the best backup center you've had, and that was probably like 2017 or something, it's just long overdue. It's long overdue to have a guy who can play center, truly play center, not not a guy who plays small ball center, not a guy that is kind of miscast like a Zeke Naji.
Yep.
Someone who is a center, is going to play the center role, is going to play in the paint. And that's all you need him to do. You don't need him to be a 3-point shooter. If he does, if he shoots the 3 ball well, it's a huge bonus. He's a big body. You want him down on the block. You want him working from, the painted area generally. He's got some decent shooting, some decent touch. He's a good rebounder. Obviously, when you've got a 7'6" wingspan, you can rebound the ball. Something that they need to be able to do well with that second unit. At times they aren't doing that well, especially with Aaron Gordon being kind of a facilitator with that second unit sometimes. You just need guys who are going to be consistent vets that are going to get you consistent numbers. And I think he's a guy that's going to do that. He's going to be able to let you rest Jokic a little bit longer in the regular season games. He's going to be a guy that if you're up 20, maybe you roll him out to start the second half, and see if you can get Jokic some extra rest. And he's a guy that you need 12 to 15 minutes from in a playoff series. I think he can give you that. So I think it's a great move. I think the fact that you flip basically a non-playing, I don't even know if he's got anything left in the tank with Dario Saric. Maybe he does, but he certainly didn't show that here. The fact that you can flip him for a very serviceable backup center and take on about $5 million additional, it seems like a pretty good no-brainer. I did hope that they would try and go get like an Al Horford, someone like that in free agency. Maybe that would have been more ideal in my mind. But the fact that there's a warm body that's a center that's going to give Jokic some rest, and a guy that has proven he can hang in this league. He's not washed up yet. He may be more of a journeyman than kind of a staple for teams, but those guys make money just the same as anyone else. Your Jeff Greens, they go and win championships too with teams, and so you need those guys. And ultimately, I think this is a move the Nuggets needed to make in order to take some pressure off of Jokic, to take some wear and tear off of Jokic, and to conserve him a little bit down the stretch going into a playoff series.
Yeah. I think all of that hits it on the head. And then the cool part about it is the Nuggets aren't done. So they go and bring in Tim Hardaway Jr.
Yep.
on another vet min, which I don't know about you, but it seemed like the Nuggets were never really able to get these vet min guys, until you get like the ghost of Mike Miller or DeAndre Jordan. I mean, guys who in their heyday were absolute ballers, but not necessarily anywhere near their heyday.
Yeah.
And so now you get Tim Hardaway Jr., who averaged, last season with the Pistons, 77 games played, averaged 11 points, shooting almost 37% from three, 2.5 rebounds, yada, yada, yada. And so a guy that I think can give you minutes at the 2 and the 3, maybe a little 1. I don't really remember, which you think from his dad being kind of one of the all-time great point guards that he would have been in that fashion, but a little bit bigger of a player. but a good shooter, especially when it comes to three, and a guy that will take 3-point shots. So, we have guys that shoot a pretty good percentage, but it's also because they shoot like every other game. And so having a guy that's ready to shoot and willing to shoot, and a guy that's been a pretty good scorer over his career, never wowed you, but only has had one season under, averaging under 10 points a game. And that was his season low in minutes. One of the season low in games played. It was a rough go with the Hawks there in 2015, but I really like this move. I think, a guy that's made some big shots in his career, has grown up around basketball, I think understands what it takes to be successful at this level, to add into, a pretty young group, especially off the bench. And so I really like the move. And, when you get guys at vet mins, really, it's the fact that you pick that guy to take up that spot. That's going to be the biggest issue, instead of, like Zeke Naji, where not only is a guy taking up a roster spot, but he's taking up a big chunk of your salary cap and not giving you any return. And so I think that's a really good move. I don't know if this says that it's it. I think that there might be one more, maybe this kind of move.
Yeah.
But you also have to account for the return of Dron Holmes, who should be back and available, I think by the start of the season, since his injury happened in Summer League. And so you kind of add that to the new faces to the NBA roster, and your bench goes from Russell Westbrook and then Peyton Watson, I think, are probably your 6 and 7. And then it really was like DJ was probably maybe your most productive guy too. I think hopefully the Vladko experiment is finally dead. Not sure about Zeke, but I'm not going to be sitting here clamoring for what that guy might be able to give us now that you have Holmes, who I think brings you some versatility. You match that with Jonas, and Jokic and Gordon, and I think the flexibility that they bring, and then adding Hardaway in your backcourt makes me feel better too, because I really like what Jalen Pickett did last year. I think he should be in the mix. I think Julius Schroeder had some growth. I think Hunter Tyson showed that he might be able to be a player. Now it's a team that makes me feel like, they might have options, at least through the regular season, of playing all 12 to 15 guys, not evenly, but consistently over the season, which will help with wear and tear, helps your guys stay together and have experience, especially if their number gets called in the playoffs. But I think to kind of go back to the team that they were when they're kind of running teams into the ground, kind of got away from that a little bit because, you're 6 deep and that was pretty rough. And then on top of it, you added shooters. You added guys who can not only, get themselves available, but can knock down some shots. And even if Valanciunas, if he can, if he can kind of realize his role, be ready, especially in those pick and pop scenarios. If you have another guy like that can stretch. Additionally, I think all these guys make you a better defensive team for sure.
Yeah.
I think Tim Hardaway Jr. has grit. Johnson has some grit. Jonas has some grit. Like that dude's like he looks like grit. And then Dron Holmes, one of the reasons why it was so impactful was his ability to be able to defend the 3, the 4, the 5. And so, you bring that with Brown in the starting lineup. Bruce Brown is a quality defender. These weren't things that we were saying before.
No.
And so, like you and I had talked about, you need your bench guy to be really, really good at a thing. Either really good defense, rebounder, 3-point shooter, playmaker, and we didn't even have. It was really Russell Westbrook was the guy that was really had something to put his hat on, and I think now you have a little bit more balance though. So Bruce Brown isn't really good at one thing, like Westbrook was at driving to the basket, but he's better at all of the other things, right? I think he's much more of a well-rounded basketball player. Same with Hardaway Jr. And so having some of those guys being able to step in for big time minutes, it's super exciting, man. What a roller coaster sports is, right? Like
For sure.
You're like, what the hell are they even doing? Why have they not hired anyone yet? Like, what in the actual, like, what? And then they're going to go draft a second round pick for a team that can't, that doesn't foster their own picks. Like, what are we doing, guys? What are we doing?
Right.
And you fast forward it now, and it's like, two guys that I couldn't pick out of a lineup are now the Nuggets GM, and they just slayed the first week so much so that, they have the second best odds to win the title this year. So it jumped from, I think, like 7th to 2nd in a 2-day stretch without any of the big stars, moving to Denver. They didn't make a trade for Giannis. They didn't, none of those things happen where it catapults a team, but it's a small move here and there. And I think even the wise guys in Vegas recognize, like, yeah, that team fits around Jokic better. Like, they're going to be able to do some of the things, the gritty stuff, the get loose balls. Like, there's just going to be more of that, I think, with this group. And with that, you saw how confident some people with a lot at stake feel like the Nuggets are going to do this year, which is music to my ears.
Yep. I think what my biggest takeaway is, you got a bunch of guys that have played in the playoffs and know what that's like. On top of it, Cam Johnson went to the finals with the Suns. So he's been on the biggest stage, Jonas Valanciunas. I was just looking because I wasn't sure. Apparently he's played in over 50 playoff games. He hasn't gotten very far in the playoffs, but he's got playoff experience. And so, he's a guy that's ready. Hardaway's been there, I think, with the Mavericks a couple times, maybe the Hawks back in the day too. And so, like, these are guys that you can rely on in a playoff setting. They understand the intensity of the game. They understand what they need to bring specifically. And I think that these are guys that you can easily, there's not going to be a power struggle with these types of guys, right? You bring them in and they're going to play a role, and they've been playing these roles for a long time now, right? Cam Johnson was not, the star scorer on the Brooklyn Nets. He was a great teammate and a great secondary, or, like you said, tertiary option. And that's what he's going to expect to be here. Same with his days in Phoenix as well. When you're playing with that core back then, you're not the go-to guy. Same with Valanciunas. He's been a starter for a long time. He's getting a little bit older. And I think when you are walking into a team where Nikola Jokic is the starting center, you probably have an easy time accepting that role. I don't think he's going to be pushing for a starting job, and I think he understands that. Same with Tim Hardaway Jr. He's a shooter. He's a guy that played off the bench last season with Detroit, and on a team of young guys too. So it's not even that he was an older guy that was disgruntled. He accepted his role and he played to the best of his ability on that team. And he brings something that I really think that the Nuggets need, which is just shooting. I think once you ship off 40, you bring in Cam Johnson. I don't know that I think that Bruce Brown is a clutch shooter, or at least has been for the Nuggets. I don't know that I see him as a great shooter. And so I think that Hardaway is definitely more your gunner. He's going to be in the corner. He's going to be waiting for the ball. He's going to be a little bit like KCP, at least offensively. Probably, definitely not the same cachet on defense. But, that same sort of feel, right? Where he gets the ball, it's going to be released immediately, and you're not going to worry about him hesitating. You're not going to be worried about his confidence in making that shot. I saw a stat or heard a stat. I think it was Harrison Wind for DNVR that Hardaway Jr. made. Actually, I think I have it pulled up. Let me see. Yeah, 63% of his open spot up 3-point attempts.
Yeah, that's what I heard too.
Which is just like, you need that. How many times did that ball get kicked to Russ in the corner? And even though he had a decent shooting year, from that spot specifically, you were never confident it was going to fall.
No,
you were like, okay, this could be good, but just about, I mean, more than half the time it wasn't. And so the fact that he's making 63% of his open spot up threes, I mean, it just gives you a confidence that if he gets the ball and he's wide open, then it's going to go in. And you need that consistency. You need that ability to swing games sometimes, right? Yeah. When all the gravity is being pulled to Jokic into the paint, or all the gravity is being pulled to that two-man game between Jokic and Murray, when that ball kicks out to the corner, whoever gets it, you want to be confident that they're going to hit it. I think you've got a few guys with Cam Johnson, with Tim Hardaway Jr., with even Aaron Gordon, the way that he's worked on his three-point ball. You feel better about the options as a whole than you did at any point last season. And so I think that is something to be excited about. I think Nuggets fans, if you're not excited, you got no pulse. I think you just got to understand that the Nuggets are in a window and they've got to be ready to attack with Jokic. And this is his team and his prime, and we're going to try and win him another championship, whatever that looks like. And so I wouldn't be surprised if things aren't, going quite to plan. If at the trade deadline, we hear rumors about other moves being made.
Yeah.
And I think that this front office has shown that they have a plan. I think this front office has shown that they're looking to capitalize on Jokic's prime. And I think that Nuggets fan should be excited about that. Even if you feel like your ownership may be a little cheap, the front office, if you have a savvy front office, you can work with that a little bit.
Yep.
You can find a middle ground. I think that's what they're doing right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I mean, in the end, you can bitch about the resources that you don't got, or, if you're good at your job, you're going to figure it out. Either way, you want to compete for a title. And hopefully, the team has at least been consistently over the first apron. I appreciated Chris's take. It also, there is a repeat offender where you get taxed on the taxed. So, billionaires or millionaire, whoever, rich people didn't get that way by giving away money. And so, to be shocked that they don't want to throw away another $60-70 million literally for nothing. I don't blame it. I'm not going to be overly with that, but don't tell us that you're championship or bust and then not be championship or bust. And as of right now, I think some of these moves was fiscally responsible. With that, they got good players, and so if they're spending less and they have a better team, are we supposed to be mad about that? Nope, we want you to spend more. No, get a good team around that fits. Not every, most juggernaut teams where they, they're getting marquee names all over the place. They usually don't mesh well. Look like the Clippers, teams have been trying that over and over. The Lakers, where there's a ceiling that you can get with a whole bunch of guys, like you said, that don't come here with the mentality to defer. And then, they fade out. I'd rather have a group who is capable, any individual capable of really producing and choosing to come here. And you know what? There's going to be nights where we need you. And to be honest, there's going to be some nights that we don't.
Correct.
And we just need you to hold serve when you can. So, and then now looking at it, I don't even know if there's, I looked at like Kyle Lowry, Seth Curry, some guys like that I think, could be some options for potential players to come in. Chris Paul, Al Horford, I think would be nice. I think, I don't think there's a clear path to now playing time when you bring in, but we'll kind of see what the dominoes there. Malcolm Brogdon would be like chef's kiss, but again, one basketball, and so I kind of worry a little bit about who you bring in and what do you think that their role might be, and so being really focused on what does the team lack versus what's the best name or the best overall player, the one with the highest upside. Like, no, let's focus on on getting guys who who are going to fit what the team needs.
Yeah. And just, final thought on this. Nuggets have moved, at least in some betting apps, into second place favorites to win the championship now.
Right.
I think that there are some, obviously that fluctuates. I think that was BetMGM that had that one. I think that some of them still have the Cavs up there. Some of them have the Rockets maybe above the Nuggets, which I think is crazy. I like what the Rockets did, but come on. And so I think that the Nuggets are back into a championship window with these moves. And it's so important. It's not just a hypothetical championship window. It's hey, we built a roster for a purpose, and we filled it with guys that know their role and are going to fight for a championship, and all are going to be aligned. No one's competing for playing time. We know our role. We're all going to go move forward together. And I think that's something to be excited about. And the coaching staff's coming together. We won't get too much into that today, but Adelman's added some pieces to his coaching staff, some young guys that can come in and help develop the young players and get people in the right places. And I think that there's a lot to look forward to.
Yeah.
So to finish off, before we finish up, we got about 8 minutes left. We talked about a little exercise. We didn't get time to talk about any other teams very much, but let's compare Broncos and Nuggets off seasons, because I think obviously the Nuggets may be incomplete. The Broncos for the most part is probably complete. We'll see what happens, but up to this point, who do you think's had the better off season? Do you think the Broncos, the way that they've constructed their team, or the Nuggets kind of re-entering this championship window?
Yeah, I really like what both teams did. I think if you look at it, who got better players? I think that the Broncos got better players.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, when you bring in Greenlaw, Ingram, and Hufanga. That said, it's kind of pretty. They both had financial restraints because of really bad contracts, but one had much less. It's because of the rookie quarterback.
Right.
Their QB room, even though that dead cap hit, isn't that much worse than any other team in the league. And so it's not necessarily a deficit that they're playing from because of blah, blah, blah. So they had more resources than the Nuggets. And so that's why I think the Nuggets have had a better offseason, going into the 2025 campaign for both of these clubs, because I didn't think that they could do anything, the Broncos did a fantastic job in getting some really good deals for the guys that they brought in, some really club-friendly salaries and structures. But the fact that we didn't even know, who's going to who's going to take the phone call? Are they even going to have anyone there for the draft?
Right.
What? And so I think that the expectation, in my opinion, was kind of so low that it was such a drastic change in that process for me. And so, in terms of that, I think that the Nuggets have really flipped a 180 from what I think I was prepared to expect. And so I think the Broncos went from a really strong roster to, a top 7 on paper roster in the NFL. I think that the Nuggets were already kind of in the top 10 and now maybe in the top 3. It's definitely, by the hair, they're super close. It's tough. You should go get some. Nice job, Spencer. What's your take? What do you think if you had to crown off-season winner, who would it be?
Yeah, I struggle with this one too, because I think you're right. I think the Broncos have the best players kind of individually that they brought in, including, even a guy like J.K. Dobbins who just kind of fills out a room really nicely. I might lean that way just a little bit. Not because I think the Nuggets did a bad job, but I think that you are taking a chance in bringing over Cam Johnson for MPJ as far as health goes. A guy who I think last year played 66 games, I think, or no, not even the last year. I think the most he's ever played in a season is 66 games. And so you're really hoping that that guy is healthy at the right time, because he does. I don't think that you can kind of bank on him being healthy all season. Right. And so if that guy goes down, you're kind of in the same spot. You have maybe another guy that you can fit into the starting rotation, but then you need one of those young guys to take a big step at Strother, Peyton Watson, Deron Holmes, someone like that. I think the Broncos are just a little more evenly balanced. I think they're a little more able to sustain some injuries. Obviously, it's a numbers game. There's a lot more bodies on an NFL roster than there are on an NBA roster. So it is hard to compare apples to apples. But I think the Broncos are just a little bit more able to sustain an injury or a period of time where someone goes down that they are counting on, because they have a little more depth. Even though the Nuggets are have more depth now, I think they're still one or two injuries away from being in another tough spot and having to rely on young guys that just haven't quite proven it yet. And so for that reason, I'll give it to the Broncos. But that being said, I love what the Nuggets have done. I love and Kona, he said Broncos have significantly better culture right now, more positive energy. I think that's true. I think that the Nuggets may be close behind, though, depending on how the season goes. You intentionally remove some negative individuals from their roles, head coach and a GM, because of that reason, right? And you're bringing in guys that are going to right the ship. And I think they have experienced positive Nuggets culture in the time that they've been here. They know what that looks like. They want to get back to that. And I think that hopefully that changes. Hopefully they can get those Broncos vibes too. Hopefully everyone starts rowing in the same direction. It feels like that's the direction they're going. So I'll give the nod to the Broncos for now. But, all of it's about wait and see, right? Yep. We'll wait and see what the season holds. Right now it's all speculation. The Broncos – if for some reason there's a sophomore slump with Bo Nix, knock on wood, or, someone key goes down for the Nuggets, then it's just kind of an exercise in futility. But I think that as it stands right now, I would lean Broncos.
I love it. I would agree with you, actually. So you won me over. But definitely, hats off to Kroenke and the Nuggets for executing a plan that I think most of us doubted, and rightfully so.
For sure.
We'll see. In the end, they still got to play the games. You don't win championships on paper, but they definitely have set themselves up for a successful run at a championship this year, and I think some more flexibility next year when it comes to re-upping Chris Brown and not Chris Brown.
Yeah. Who
did what Brown did I?
Bruce Brown, Christian Brown.
Bruce Brown, Christian Brown, not Chris Brown. It is Chris Brown. Chris Brown, not exactly Chris Brown. Yeah. That's a digression. We're not gonna have time to, but yeah, I love it. Hey, you know what though? It's fun stuff. We would have thrown the Avs in there. Haven't made as many. I think.
Yeah.
Visible key moves.
Maybe this time next week we'll see.
Maybe next week we'll have something to talk about. Rumor is there's something amiss, and hopefully maybe they're motivated by the Nuggets making some moves. They're like, all right, now it's time.
Okay, let me throw this out here real quick. Well, this is old, obviously, but I did see from where is it? 3 hours ago, Yahoo Sports. Who is this? Some dude, Caleb Hightower, don't know who he is. Denver Nuggets should be considered early offseason winners. Where is it? Could the Nuggets have a massive trade or signing under their sleeve? According to Bleacher Report's Dan Favale, Denver could move on from their star guard and land Los Angeles Lakers LeBron James. What is your thought? Obviously, this isn't something that is necessarily coming to fruition. I think this is more of an exercise by the people that have seen the movement right now and know the Nuggets are making moves.
Mm-hmm.
What's your thought on
that? I think that it's interesting because it might be the first time, right, that LeBron really would be the second fiddle.
Yeah. I wonder if
even with Luka there, when it came to playoff time, LeBron was the more consistent performer. He was even after Luka got there. Luka is going to have some really eye-popping games. But in terms of defense, in terms of all-around play, LeBron is still a better player, in my opinion. With that, I don't think he would come here. I don't know that he would leave. I don't know how he wants his story to end. What is because really probably whatever team he goes to next, that's probably it.
Right.
And so, if he came here, I would be under the belief that he thinks we're going to win a championship. Like, why else would you come to Denver? Sure. To finish it out. We're not a market that really kind of suits you in your fandom, unless you kind of want it to chill out a little bit. And so I think that there would have been interest. I think he really thought about the Nuggets were, I think, one of the final 5 teams or final 3 teams when he was kind of taking his tour before he went back to Cleveland. But I think that he's his eyes are too big, I think, for this kind of market. And for as great as it might sound for him to take less of a load and having Jokic do the heavy lifting and that kind of stuff, it would be really different for him on how he played the game, because he kind of plays it like Jokic. He's a guy that will make the right play, is fantastic with the ball in his hands and creating for others. He's not a guy that's going to run off screens and that kind of stuff, especially at 40. But if that move were Christian Brown and Murray for LeBron, I'd do that in a blink.
Yeah.
Just go. And then you know what? That's the swing. Like, if they didn't win the championship, I knew though that they went for championship or bust, because there's really nothing after that. You're giving those out. But it'll be interesting to see where it goes. I think that he'll stay in LA, but I also will not be shocked if he doesn't. I think that team is trying to move on and kind of get the new era of Laker basketball, and I don't think he's going to be in those long-term plans for sure.
Yeah, no, and I think, like I said, it's more of an exercise. I think it is interesting that they are making those connections, though. It just is more to show that, people think the Nuggets are back and got a chance to win it, and they know LeBron's ring chasing. So I don't know that I would love it. Just, I think if you trade away Murray, you don't really have a point guard anymore. Jalen Pickett's like your best ball handler.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that LeBron becomes your point guard.
He would probably have to. Yeah.
And that's how I would do it. The problem is do you want him playing 36 minutes a night? Like, probably not. Are you deep enough to not have? I don't think they have enough ball handlers on the team to do that. Tim Hardaway Jr. maybe. But you know what? That would be a problem I'd figure out. That's the go figure it out.
For sure.
Yeah, your problem, guys.
Yeah.
Come on, Adelman. Whose job went from like confusing to high expectations real quick, right? Like, hey, we just kind of need the band to get back together. Do your best. Now it's like we reloaded, man. Removed some of the tumor, and you should be ready to go. And like, oh yep, you got expectation, DA from jump.
For sure. All right, guys. We appreciate you today. We're gonna bump out of here. We got some basketball to play. So we appreciate you being here as always. And we will see you next week. Same time. Well, maybe same time. We'll see. Hope maybe earlier. We'll see. But again, we appreciate you. We'll see you next week. Have a good one. Be kind to each other. Be safe out there. And if you need a sports prescription, ask a doctor.
Fast lane when I pass in the street. Bag of money in the passenger seat. tempo's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast racking up the flame out. So high, I might never come down, so what, this is my lifestyle. Wait a minute, work hard for the car, so that's why it's all tinted. Wait a minute, had a real late night, woke up with my